importantly perhaps than the debts to you that this report contains, is that it's based on ideas and visions that you and we probably share already, so that we're part of the same epistemic community, as it were. So in a sense, I'm preaching to the converted. I will be preaching to the converted. But as the converted, I think you deserve to know what the homily is going to be this time. So, having said that, I should also mention that UNESCO and UNDP have both, as is entirely appropriate, somewhat modified the text that I submitted to them in June of last year. But they haven't modified it in ways that I would be ashamed to be associated with. So that's not a problem. So let's just get into the substance of the report. In the town of Pekin in Senegal, the local association called Afric-Urban has created a hip-hop academy that trains young people in digital graphic production and design, music and video production, promotional management and marketing, as well as DJing and English as language. This innovative program is helping young creative industry professionals perform more effectively in both the local and global market, and markets that are in perpetual artistic and technological evolution. Another example, 20 years ago, hundreds of local weaver families in the Egyptian village of Nagada became destitute because of a sharp decline in the market for their key product, the ferka, a brightly colored scarf. But in 1991, a Swiss potter teamed up with a Lebanese designer to revive textile production by designing new products and updating techniques. Together with the local weavers, they built up the Nagada company, whose distinctive products today attract customers from all over the world. A third example, in Chiang Mai, northern Thailand, the Chiang Mai Creative City Initiative is a think tank plus activity and networking platform, and has been launched as a cooperative endeavor by activists from the education, private, community, and government sectors. Building upon the cultural assets that are available locally, the CMCC aims to make the city more attractive as a place to live, work, and invest in. Each of these projects, and there are countless others in all regions of the world, and many in China, as we have heard this morning, each of these projects embodies the huge potential of the creative economy at the local level in developing countries. So, identifying, analyzing, and channeling that potential is the central focus of this special edition of the United Nations Creative Economy Report. The two previous editions argued and demonstrated already that the creative economy is not only one of the most rapidly growing sectors of the world economy, but is also a highly transformative one in terms of income generation, job creation, and export earnings. But that is not all there is to it. For unlocking the potential of the cultural economy should also mean promoting the overall creativity and energy of societies, affirming the distinctive identity of the places where it flourishes and clusters, improving the quality of life there, and strengthening the resources that people have for the imagining of different new futures. And it's only then that the cultural and creative industries, that this sector can feed into, and I quote, those new development pathways that encourage creativity and innovation in the pursuit of inclusive, equitable, and sustainable growth and development, which is, and I close the quote, which is what the UN System Task Team on the post-2015 UN Development Agenda that Daniel has already mentioned. That's what this task team exalts the international community. That's the path. Those pathways are what the task team exalts the international community to take. Now, these pathways are a multitude of different local and subnational trajectories. So So rather than staying at the national level, as was the case largely in the two previous reports, this one explores those local pathways and the ways in which they can be strengthened as well as widened. For notwithstanding the importance of national level policy interventions, national scale measures, it is clear that the next frontier of knowledge creation rests on understanding interactions, specificities, and policies at the local level. Likewise, argues the report, the next frontier of culture in and for development resides in promoting the cultural economy in communities, cities, and regions across the developing world. In all assessments of the cultural economy, developing countries appear to be severely hampered by a range of negative and or limiting conditions. And these hindrances could make us pessimistic. Yet there is plenty of evidence available to counter the pessimism, beginning with the sheer vitality in so many different settings across the world of precisely that diversity of cultural expressions that Daniel has just talked about. And much can be done in a creative way, creatively, to promote these cultural expressions as engines of sustainable human development. Yet, once we take a holistic view of human development in the capabilities approach sense of Amartya Sen and Martha Nussbaum, once we envision development as a process that widens people's choices and builds their capabilities, it becomes both possible and necessary, the report argues, to broaden the terms of engagement, to transform the terms of engagement. In other words, to widen our horizon and recognize the ways in which culture's place in development transcends the purely economic dimension alone. And so around those core ideas that I've obviously delivered in a very, very succinct fashion, given the time frame with which we're working this morning, around those core ideas, the report is organized in 8 chapters. Chapter 1 outlines the evolving concepts and contexts of the creative economy, a much more succinct presentation of all that material than what you would find in the 2008 and 2010 reports. It also goes into the definitions of the terminology, the different diagrams, round, oval, square, and rectangle. Chapter 2 examines the central role of the local level in fostering inclusive and sustainable creative economies. It focuses really on what's special about the local level, what's different. Chapter 3 explores 3 key non-economic ways in which cultural creativity is important. And remember that one of the key signatures of this report is its equal emphasis, if not its greater emphasis, on the non-economic. And the first is on cultural expression and artistic practice, both individual and collective, as energy and empowerment for social groups, for individuals as well as groups, particularly the marginal and the disenfranchised. The second is an exploration of how cultural heritage, both tangible and intangible, in addition to the income that it affords, provides people with memories, knowledge, and skills that are vital for the forging of sustainable relationships with natural resources and ecosystems. And the third area is how urban planning and architecture create built environments that enhance individual and group well-being. Chapter 4 then sketches out the diverse forms of the creative economy that exist in different local settings across the world, all the regions of the world, and offers a sort of an overview that's necessarily not systematic and backed up by loads of data, but is more anecdotal and example-based. But it demonstrates, this chapter, that cultural creativity, whether it is marketed or whether it is not, exists in many places and forms, and that in the Global South, these forms do not have to be mirror images of the forms that have been developed in the Global North, although many of the models, we know, many of the models of creative economy development have been exported from the Global North. So we're taking a more pluralistic view here of the contours of the creative economy that is something that is contingent, path-dependent, and with very different, varying structures when you go from one place to another. Chapter 5 explores a number of critical factors. It's the sorts of things that decision makers, policymakers, politicians, officials will need to be thinking about. Financing, obviously. What are the agents, the intermediaries, the institutions that we need to make transformative policy making work? What is the role in decision making and policy making in local communities? What are the specific mechanisms for the value chain to strengthen it, to boost it, the entire value chain? What sort of new capacities and skills are required? The whole dimension of effective intellectual property rights, and of course the very important role in the digital environment of transnational exchanges and flows. Chapter 6 relates to the sorts of indicators of effectiveness and success that can be proposed to policymakers when they are engaged in the process of developing the creative economy for their cities, towns, and regions. Chapter 7 analyzes the design and implementation of a number of small and medium-sized initiatives carried out under the aegis of UNESCO's International Fund for Cultural Diversity and the UNDP Spain. This was a project financed by the government of Spain when it had a lot of money. It's called the Millennium Development Goals Achievement Fund, Thematic Window on Cultural Development. And both these projects together have yielded a wealth of information that has been analyzed to offer local decision makers perspectives and insights for how they can work better on the basis of the UN experience. And finally, the 8th chapter, the concluding chapter, summarizes the lessons learned and groups the lessons into the 10 following recommendations. This is probably the section of the report that has shows the most differences from the one that was submitted to UNESCO in June. I think that's entirely appropriate, because when you get into the business of proposing policy for others, it should really be the institutions that take that responsibility, not necessarily the academic analysts. So the following 10 recommendations are as follows. They're quite brief, and I don't think it would take me more than a minute, which is what I have. 1. Recognize that in addition to its economic benefits, the creative economy also generates non-monetary value that contributes significantly to achieving people-centered, inclusive, and sustainable development. 2. Make culture a driver and enabler of economic, social, and environmental development processes. 3. Reveal opportunities through mapping local assets of the creative economy. 4. Strengthen the evidence base through rigorous data collection as a fundamental upstream investment to any coherent creative economy development policy. 5. Investigate the connections between the informal and formal sectors as crucial for informed creative economy policy development. 6. Analyze the critical success factors that contribute to forging new pathways for local creative economy development. 7. Invest in creativity, innovation, and sustainable creative enterprise development across the entire value chain. 8. Invest in local capacity building to empower creators and cultural entrepreneurs, government officials, and private sector companies. 9. Engage in South-South cooperation to facilitate productive mutual learning and inform international policy agendas for development. And 10, mainstream culture into local economic and social development programs, even when faced with competing priorities. Now, what we heard from Professors Jin and Wan just a few minutes ago shows that if you unpack all of those 10 recommendations, it's quite clear that China is engaging with them in a number of ways already, and that will probably be the case in a lot of other countries. So the usefulness of a report such as this, which comes out with the authority of both UNESCO and the UNDP, is to make it possible to launch what you might call a process of engagement with this set of ideas, that is being put on the table in 2013, November 2013, and generate debate around that. And that would be, for this report, the best thing to happen. It's not a Bible, it's not a canon, it's not a book of recipes, but it is a text around which the whole debate can be carried forward. Thank you very much.